Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher, here for a commentary now on the March for Life that just happened a few days ago. And I was contemplating whether I should go out to Washington, D.C., drive down. It's about an 8-hour drive from where I'm at, maybe 8-hour drive from where I'm at, depending on the route I take. So it's quite a ways, and it was snowing quite a bit, pretty cold out there. So I decided to not go out this year. I've been different years in the past and decided to just watch it all from the television screen in the warmth and comfort of my home. So congratulations to everyone who did brave the weather out there. And you could see that it was snowing quite heavily out there. So those people, you have to give them credit for showing up on a cold, snowy January day to be in the middle of the mall there in Washington, D.C. to March for Life. So praise the Lord for that. I'm happy that it's here again, the 51st year of the March for Life. And I'm wanting to just give my impressions of the 51st Annual March for Life in Washington, D.C. So obviously the first impression you get is what I got when I first started attending these in person, and that was the vast majority of the people involved in the march and at the rally were younger people in their 20s, quite a few teenagers, and quite a few 20-something college students, younger people in their 20s and 30s. And that is great. But I did raise the question, this is years and years ago when I first started attending. I raised the question, well, how many of these young people are here out of strong conviction, or how many of them are here because this is a field trip that their school is taking them on? So you have a lot of Catholic high schools, you have a lot of Catholic colleges, you have a lot of colleges in general, Protestant and Catholic. I would say most of the crowd was Catholic in one form or another, but there were a lot of Protestant people and people of all different denominations there in the crowd. I noticed that there was a huge bus, chartered bus from Liberty University in Virginia, and I think they said they brought a couple, maybe hundreds or even 1,000 students from their college showed up at the March for Life. So that's a positive thing. So it's a very, very young crowd. Now, I'm not quite sure whether that's all good or all bad. There are pros and cons of that kind of a crowd there. If you think back, for example, on the famous I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King in the 60s in Washington, D.C., I think if you look back over that crowd, it was not predominantly teenagers and 20-somethings. These were people who were civil rights activists. They were concerned people, and there was an older crowd there. Not that they were senior citizens primarily or really old, but they were middle-aged people and people who had to take the day off work and had to sacrifice something for this. So I think it is great that we have a pro-life presence in Washington, D.C., bottom line. So however many teenagers or young people are there, that's great. But I do question how you can build a movement on teenagers and 20-somethings, and how sustainable is that in the future, and what does that translate out into further down the road, 10, 20 years from now? Are these same teenagers and 20-somethings still going to be involved in pro-life advocacy if we're still battling the battle and the fight for the unborn? Or how many have just moved on to some other phase in their life? You know, the people who showed up at the civil rights rallies of Martin Luther King, I think they were very serious people, and they were really dedicated to the cause. And I think they probably were that way their entire life. So we have yet to see whether this will translate into a lifelong advocacy of the human value of the innocent unborn. Also, again, there brings up the point, if you look back at those civil rights issue rallies with Martin Luther King and the leadership of his team, there was a seriousness and a somberness to these rallies. These rallies were addressing a very important point. They had a very specific thing, and they were not joking around so much, and they were not laughing, and they were not pretending that the crowd and the turnout was the thing. They were talking about an issue that was very, very, very important to them. Now, I wonder if the pro-life March for Life that we have every year, at least in the times I've been there, could use a little more seriousness to the presentations and a little more seriousness to the march. Now, on the other hand, it is a different situation because abortion is a very, very serious issue, but it's really hard to sustain that level of intensity and seriousness and gravity with a large crowd because it's such a somber and sad issue. So you're going to have to, at times, bring in some lighthearted or levity or even joking, but you have to be careful because you don't want to trivialize your rally. And I feel at some times where this pro-life, the modern iteration of the March for Life, is almost like a cheerleading pep rally for the pro-life cause. And there's a lot of smiling, there's a lot of joking, there's a lot of positivity, but on the other hand, you have to be careful about that over-positivity because if you go too far, it trivializes it and makes it superficially just a cause that you're out there rallying around and you're there with all these other people and it's a rah, rah, let's go, let's our team win. And it seems like it has taken that theme recently where you have maybe too much positivity, too much winsomeness, too much, jovial joking around, and too much smiling even. I mean, it's just, you can do that too much. If you look at the Martin Luther King rallies, you look at the civil rights, they were there and they were there to do business. This was a serious thing. They were sacrificing a lot to be there. It was an important thing that they had to say to the world and to the nation, and they were there to make their voice heard, and they had a very serious undertone to what they were talking about. Martin Luther King especially. You did not see him get up there and joke a lot or even smile a lot. He wasn't cracking jokes, and he wasn't acting like the crowd itself is the thing and you are here and that's the important point. No, it's the cause is the important thing. What we're fighting for is the important thing. We're fighting for truth. We're fighting for the unborn children in the womb. And so there needs to be a more of a serious tone, I think, struck at the March for Life and at the pro-life rally. The speaking and the speakers have to make sure that it's not just too lighthearted in their presentation. There is a time and a place for that, but you have to maintain that seriousness, or else people will look on this thing and say, well, they're not even taking themselves very seriously. They have the numbers here. There's a huge crowd here. But are they really dealing with the issue that they are claiming to be fighting for? Or are they sort of superficially touching on the issue that they claim they're fighting for, but really they're pushing this or that or the other? So that is something I observed, and I was a little curious. Like, okay, we're here. We're fighting for the unborn. The slaughter of children in their wounds, the blood of children is crying out for vengeance to heaven. And there's a rock concert before the rally and the march. And it's just maybe it's because of the youth, and maybe it's because of the teenagers and the 20-somethings, and that sort of brings that sort of lighthearted attitude toward the march, and maybe if there were older people, more middle-aged and more serious adults there, it would be more of a serious atmosphere. I don't know. But it just seems like we have to make sure that we don't let that rally become just a pep rally. We want to make sure that we stay on target and say, hey, this is a very, very, very serious thing that we're dealing with. We're talking about life and death. We're talking about babies dying, being killed, millions and millions, the blood of millions of babies on the soil of this country. And if we know in the Bible, God judges nations for a lot less. So this nation is facing judgment for the death of the blood of these children in our land. So this is a very serious thing. So we need to reflect that in the rally and I would say we need to move the march and the rally a little bit more toward the serious end and a little less toward the lighthearted, levity end. The other thing I ask about the rally, and I do, again, I appreciate everybody that showed up, and next year maybe I will be there to march alongside of them. And I was impressed by the number of senators and congressmen and women who were actually able and willing to go on record and saying they stand with the March for Life. And so they showed a number of different senators, we're talking senators, and then they showed a number of representatives from the House of Representatives, and they were on the big screen television. So they weren't actually there at the rally. Some of them probably were, but they had already taped a endorsement for the rally on the big screen. And it is very encouraging to see politicians who are willing to put their reputation and their name on the line and say, I stand with pro-life Christians who are defending the sanctity of human life. So that's, you need to hand it to those brave men and women. And almost all of them, of course, were Republican. And that should tell you everything you need to know about the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not the party of life. They are the party of death. So if you are a person that votes Democratic, if you're a person that promotes Democratic candidates, what are you doing? Why are you promoting the party of death? Democrats are for abortion. Republicans, for the most part, in the mainstream, are against abortion. So why are you over there voting for a Democrat who wants to keep abortion and the blood of children unborn flowing in this country? And even worse, they want to make you pay for those abortions with taxpayer money. So it is interesting that of all of the senators and all of the congressmen and women who endorsed the March for Life on the video screen, I don't even think there was a Democrat at all. There might have been. Now, sometimes I've been to the March for Life in Washington where they have found somewhere a Democrat who is pro-life. But that's a rare occasion when they actually find a Democrat who will actually be willing to admit, yes, I'm pro-life. I go against my entire party. I go against the entire administration, the President Biden's administration. I go against the entire Democratic caucus in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. I go against the entire Democratic electorate and voters. And I'm pro-life despite of that. You have to ask yourself why they're Democrat if they go against their entire party. But it's interesting that all of these people were basically Republicans, who the congressmen and the senators and the politicians. And we have to pray for them, that these are the people who can help change things in Washington. Now, another question I had about the March for Life, the modern March for Life, the most recent iteration of the March for Life, is it seems like it's women-centric. Now, on one level, you would think, well, yeah, of course it's going to be women-centric. Abortion is a women's issue. But my question is abortion really primarily a women's issue? You might say, for example, gang killings in Chicago. These are almost always exclusively males, men who are killing other young men in the inner city Chicago, gang-related violence. Would you say gang killings in Chicago is a man's issue or a men's issue? No, it doesn't sound right. No, it's an everybody issue. It's an everybody issue. That's why, for example, the woman mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, was constantly talking about gang violence and gang murders and everything like that, even though it's predominantly men, almost overwhelmingly, exclusively men who are the ones that are killing and being killed. And she didn't seem to feel like, well, I can't really speak to this because it's a man's issue. No, it's everybody's issue. And it's the same way with abortion, but the March for Life, the most recent iteration of the March for Life, the last maybe 10 years or so, the signaling, the messaging has been that abortion is a women's issue. So, for example, every year you have these different themes. So this year's theme, I think something was like to every child to every mother, or and then there was one year I went and it says pro-life is pro-feminism, or feminism is pro-life. Again, women-centric March for Life. Now, that doesn't seem to be an accurate description of how the pro-life movement should be, because it's not primarily a women's issue. It's a societal issue. It's not primarily about the women, right? It's about the babies. It's about the fact that as a society, we're allowing children, babies, unborn babies, to be killed, hundreds of thousands, even at some years, 1 million babies in this country a year killed. And so you have to ask yourself, well, wait, why is this the case where you have a theme, an emphasis that is primarily woman-centric when you're talking about the March for Life? And it shouldn't be a woman-centric issue. It should be everybody-centric issue. But it's promoted as if it's a woman's issue. For example, a lot of the literature and the promotional material that you see put out by the March for Life organization today is pink, and they have roses and flowers and all kinds of things. It just makes it very women-centric, and that is not the accurate portrayal of the pro-life movement. The pro-life movement is for the justice for the unborn. It is not primarily about women. It is not primarily about the mother. It's about the baby. The babies are the ones that are dying. The babies are the ones that are being killed. And so we want to have the babies protected. And we want laws promoting and protecting the human life in the womb. We don't want we don't want the women to be injured or die as a result of either pregnancies or anything else. But that's not the problem. The problem is that babies are being killed. So we need to keep that in balance. See, what's happening is it's being turned into primarily a women's issue. And so you have a lot of women speakers. You have the president of the March for Life is a woman. You have a lot of the organizers are women. And quite naturally, you're going to get the women-centric pro-life movement. And that's what's happened. Now, some of the negative problems that this develops when you have a women-centric pro-life movement is that you have the subtle messages being communicated by the pro-life movement at this March for Life is that the language is turned around so that the woman who's actually going in to have her baby killed through abortion, and the women who are actually responsible for the death of their unborn children, they're now painted as innocent victims. For example, some of the language that was being used at the rally by some of the speakers, it was that there were women facing an unexpected pregnancy, or women were facing unplanned pregnancies. But then you have to back up and look at the context and say, well, wait a minute. You're having sex outside of marriage. You're having sex, and then you get pregnant. How is that unexpected? How is that unplanned? If you're having sex, you have no reasonable right to be surprised if you get pregnant, right? I mean, doesn't that follow logically? If you're going to have sex, if you're going to do this reproductive act, then when reproduction occurs, you're surprised, you're shocked. It's an unplanned or unexpected pregnancy. It makes no sense. But it makes sense if you're trying to paint the woman as an innocent victim. And this is just dishonest. It's not accurate. And also, there were references to women who found themselves pregnant. Oh, really? You mean the woman was just sitting there in a chair reading a book, and lo and behold, she just found herself to be pregnant? Are we talking about something similar to the Virgin Mary? She just found herself to be pregnant? Now, that's an actual description of what Mary found herself to be pregnant was accurate. But when women are pregnant today, they don't just find themselves pregnant. They are pregnant as the result, again, of having sex with a man. And anyone with a thinking brain can put two and two together and say, if you're going to have sex, if you're going to be sexually active, you had better be prepared to be responsible if you get pregnant, because that's the natural reproductive result of having sex. So this language that's trying to confuse and sort of insulate women from taking responsibility is removed from the pro-life movement here in this March for Life. So there's also the theme of one of the women found that she was pregnant. She found herself to be pregnant with an unexpected pregnancy. And then she went to her boyfriend, and he automatically said, "You're going to have an abortion, right?" And she was greatly hurt and disappointed. Well, wait. You're not following the will of God. You're having sex outside of marriage. You're fornicating. You therefore then get pregnant, because that's what happens when you have sex. That's happened for thousands of years, generation after generation. It's nothing new. And then she's out of wedlock. She's not married. There were no promises exchanged to be faithful till death do us part, through thick and thin. And so then she goes back to her boyfriend, and he says, well, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And she's disappointed. Why in the world would she be disappointed in her boyfriend's response when she is not married and she's sleeping around, and then she gets pregnant, and then the boyfriend doesn't want to make a commitment to any child because he's not committed to her? And that's the purpose of a marriage. So again, there's this insulating the woman from the consequences of her actions, and then almost heaping whatever blame there is on the boyfriend because he doesn't act like he's married to her. Now, he should. The right thing to do would have been to say, well, I will help you raise this child, or I will help you support this child. But again, you're asking someone who is not in a marriage relationship to take responsibility for a child that he didn't sign up to be responsible for in marriage. And, the right thing, of course, would be to go ahead and be responsible for the child, but it's asking a lot and it's unreasonable. So this emphasis on the women's issue and women are the innocent victims of abortion, no, that is just not true. And I think the pro-life movement here at the March for Life needs to get honest and get real and say that there is blame for the woman, and there's blame for the man, and there's equally blame all around for this tragedy that's taking place in our country. And we need to end abortion, but we also need to face the reality that abortion just doesn't happen in this country. Abortion is happening because of women taking their baby to have them killed. And also, men are responsible in the sense that they were part of that, creating that baby through pregnancy and getting that woman pregnant, and they have an obligation to try to help. But both of these things need to be brought out. And so you've got some different things happening with the pro-life movement. I think the biggest thing the pro-life movement needs to do now is fully articulate a very clear goal and plan for the future. I think right now there's a little bit of muddiness and murkiness and vagueness, and there's a lot of unknowns. I mean, one of the reasons I didn't go this year was because it's like, what is it that we're actually marching for? Now, somebody will say, well, we're marching for the end of abortion. Yeah, but before we were marching for the end of Roe v. Wade, which would be a part of ending abortion. Now it's just like we're marching for the end of abortion, but what is the concrete goal and what is the concrete plan that you have that we can achieve this? And unfortunately, that was not articulated at this year's March for Life. I don't think there was one real serious speaker who actually stepped up to the podium and said, okay, here is a plan, here is a goal, and here is a plan, achievable goal that we can do now that Roe v. Wade is dismantled. And we have to do it this way, and we have to work with red states, and we have to work in blue states, and we have to work in the so-called purple states, the sort of in-between swing states. And we have to make this abortion go away through different means in different states, because each state now has its choice as to how it will react to abortion. That has not been articulated fully, and we need to pray that our leaders in the pro-life movement will get a goal and get a plan and be able to articulate that so everyone can be a part of coming together and ending abortion totally. Hope that's been helpful. We'll talk to you next week. God bless.